And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day, a great nation, and matters of great significance occurring all around us. There is a Munich Security Conference in which four different potential presidential candidates for 2028 gave speeches and defined what they're about. Who are they and who won this four-way appearance together in Munich? We will get to that. We'll also get to the heavy rumors about the resignation of a stalwart conservative on the Supreme Court, who may give President Trump a chance for a fourth appointment to the nation's highest judicial body. Who is it? Who's leaving? Who's coming? We will get to that on the Michael Medved Show. And talking about leaving, the big news involves the death of a major American political figure and the kind remarks by President Trump. Kind might be going too far, but the open-minded and praiseworthy remarks by President Trump about the passing of the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who, as the New York Times says, impassioned oratory and populist vision of a rainbow coalition of the poor and the forgotten made him the nation's most influential black figure in the years between the civil rights crusade to the Reverend Dr. King and the election of Barack Obama as president of the United States. Jesse Jackson died today. He was 84. His death was confirmed by his family in a statement which said that Mr. Jackson died peacefully, but did not give a cause or say where he died. Mr. Jackson was hospitalized in November for treatment of a rare and particularly severe neurodegenerative condition, progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, that according to the advocacy organization he founded, the Rainbow Push Coalition. In 2017, he announced that he had Parkinson's disease, which in its early stages can produce similar effects on bodily movements and speech. Trump made MAGA mad. Well, this is an increasingly common kind of reaction, but how did it make him mad here? It made him mad because he said nice things about the passing of Jesse Jackson. Welcome to today's ugly politics. Trump said on social media and Truth Social, "I knew him well long before becoming president. He was a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. He was very gregarious, someone who truly loved people, despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left. Democrats all," says Trump. "It was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way. I provided office space for him and his Rainbow Coalition for years in the Trump building at Wall Street, responded to his request for help in getting criminal justice reform passed and signed, which is true and a significant contribution for which President Trump drew praise from Reverend Jackson. He responded to his help for getting criminal justice reform passed and signed, Trump said, when no other president would even try. Single-handedly pushed and passed along further funding for historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, which Jesse loved, but also which other presidents would not do. Responded to Jesse's support for opportunity zones, the single most successful economic development package yet approved for black businessmen and women, and much more. Jesse was a force of nature like few others before him. He had much to do with the election without acknowledgement or credit of Barack Hussein Obama, a man who Jesse could not stand. He loved his family greatly, and to them I send my deepest sympathies and condolences. Jesse will be missed. President Donald J. Trump. Well, first of all, it's simply not true to say that Jesse couldn't stand Barack Hussein Obama. They were operatives together and to some extent rivals for influence in Chicago and in terms of the Black community. But Jesse was such an outspoken supporter of Obama and recognized, I think rightfully so, that his campaigns and its multiple campaigns for president actually helped to pave the way for Obama's historic and successful campaigns for president, both of them. The fact is that what Trump is saying about Jesse's personality is true. I had the privilege of meeting Reverend Jackson on several occasions. He had created a great controversy in his life through a private conversation on an airplane. He was taking a flight and had said to one of his seatmates, "Well, I'm headed to Town to get some money from Jaime," and meaning that he was headed toward heavily Jewish New York. This is before Mamdani, of course, and he was going to be getting contributions from Jewish donors. I always thought that the controversy concerning Town was overblown because, of course, it was an insulting and sort of offhandedly casual anti-Semitic remark, but it wasn't one that was leveled with hatred, and it wasn't one that was meant to be a public conversation. It's always one of those things where if you're in a private conversation on an airplane, to make that into a major deal is a real question. Meanwhile, in Geneva, the delegations from Moscow and Kiev met in Geneva today for another round of U.S. brokered peace talks a week before the fourth anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of its neighbor. However, expectations for any breakthroughs in the scheduled 2 days of talks in Switzerland were low, with neither side apparently ready to budge from its positions on key territorial issues and future security guarantees, despite the United States setting a June deadline for a settlement. The head of the Ukrainian delegation, Rustan Umerov, posted photos on social media of the three delegations at a horseshoe-shaped table with Ukraine and Russia officials sitting across from each other. U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, sat at the head of the table in front of the U.S., Russian, Ukrainian, and Swiss flags. The Dispatch is reporting also that the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, met with International Atomic Energy Commission Director General Rafael Grossi in Geneva ahead of talks with the U.S. negotiators also today. The inspectors have not been permitted to enter Iranian nuclear sites since the U.S. and Israel carried out a series of punishing bombings on the country's nuclear program last year. And the status of Iran's nuclear stockpile of highly enriched uranium is unknown. This will continue, along with the speculation about the resignation, possibly, of a member of the Supreme Court, and new polling about what is going to happen in the crucial off-year election of 2026 coming up in November and coming up right here on The Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved show, there is a brand new Jeffrey Epstein fallout. There is information about a potential plan being put into place for Hamas to disarm, for the armaments to be taken away from the terrorist organization that started this whole round of violence in the Middle East. We will cover that. We will cover the rumors about a resignation on the Supreme Court and the looming prospect of, yes, another government shutdown. Can you believe it? The one of those stories that I think is every bit as annoying to people, well, not quite, as the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Considering Jeffrey Epstein, Sky is reporting that President Trump has hit back at claims made by Hillary Clinton of a cover up over the release of the Epstein files. This president accusing her of having Trump derangement syndrome. On Monday, yesterday, Hillary Clinton accused the Trump administration of slow walking the release of the files relating to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and urged his team to get the files out in an interview with the BBC. I mean, really? The the idea that you're slow walking something that includes literally millions of documents. They're talking about some 3 million documents with 1 million mentions of President Trump's name. And the idea that this is being slow walked rather than simply all sent out there at once for media and for President Trump's critics and for others who were very eager to show the association between Trump and Epstein. The idea that this particular fascination, some years after Epstein's death, I was just thinking about that, is the personality of this very warped and loathsome individual. Epstein would be enjoying this right now. The fact that so long after his own suicide, he continues to absorb our political class when there are more important things going on. There's also a report from The Hill that Hyatt Hotels Corporation executive, the chair of the Hyatt Corporation executive, is Tom Pritzker, who has become the latest public figure to face blowback over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, announcing Monday he would resign from his role. Now, who's Pritzker? He is the cousin of the governor of Illinois and would-be presidential candidate. And he has served as chair of the Hyatt Corporation. He has announced that he would resign from his role. Pritzker, who is the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker's cousin, reveals his decision in a letter to the company's board after recently disclosed files showed he kept in close touch with the disgraced financier years after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor. Tom Pritzker, who has served as the chair since 2004, hasn't been personally associated with wrongdoing, but he did communicate with Epstein about his interactions with women. I exercise terrible judgment in maintaining contact with them, and there is no excuse for failing to distance myself sooner, Tom Pritzker wrote in the letter. He is the latest major figure to step back from a position over revelations from the Epstein files, joining others such as Wall Street financier Kathy Rumler, corporate attorney Brad Karp, and Hollywood mogul Casey Wasserman, among others. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Inquirer is reporting in a local story with international implications that federal judges have ordered Trump administration to restore slavery exhibits. No, it's not restoring slavery. It's restoring slavery exhibits in the President's House. That's part of the Independence National Historic Park in Independence Hall. It's where the Liberty Bell is. It's part of the center of the tourist industry in my native city of Philadelphia. As if the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's 1984 now existed, this court is now asked to determine whether the federal government has the power it claims, Judge Roof wrote. It does not. A federal judge ordered President Donald Trump's administration to restore the slavery exhibits that the National Park Service removed from the president's house, which is actually just a ruin. It's not a well-preserved former mansion like the White House, which became the president's house after to the Potomac. No, this was a few walls that were decorated and explained by posters that did a good job of recognizing the fact that when George Washington was president of the United States and he lived in that space, he had 8 different slaves, one of whom escaped famously from slavery. But he had 8 different slaves who worked for the president on a personal basis. The U.S. District Judge Cynthia M. Roof issued a ruling yesterday requiring that the federal government restore the president's house site to its physical status as of January 21st, 2026, which is the day before the exhibits were removed under orders that trace back to Trump himself. The order does not give the government a deadline for the restoration of the site, but it does require that the National Park Service take steps to maintain the site and ensure the safety of the exhibits, which memorialize the enslaved people who lived in George Washington's Philadelphia home during his presidency. The exhibits were abruptly removed in January following months of scrutiny by the Trump administration. Roof, who was an appointee to the court by George W. Bush, compares the federal government's arguments that it can unilaterally control the exhibits in national parks to the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's 1984, a novel about a dystopian totalitarian regime. Do those words apply to Donald Trump? Coming up, Rubio versus Gavin Newsom versus AOC, all for the presidency, all from Munich. We'll get to that coming up.
Sign up today for our free weekly newsletter at michaelmedved.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
And on the Michael Medved show, yesterday, of course, was the official federal holiday for President's Day. And this means that we still have ahead of us the actual birthday of George Washington, who many historians consider the greatest of all our presidents, or if not the greatest, the second greatest next to Abraham Lincoln. George Washington was born on February 22nd. And we're still celebrating President's Day at the Medved Show, and at the Medved History Store, there is a President's Day sale where an inspiring collection of compact discs and downloads are available at a spectacular budget price. That's 5 different compact discs, 5 different downloads, all for $42.99. You can bundle and save. And find out why it is that George Washington is held in such high esteem by historians and by every subsequent generation and why the esteem for Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan is also profoundly justified and important. Go to medvedhistorystore.com or just michaelmedved.com and take advantage of the rest of February. You can send even a belated Valentine to George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan and Theodore Roosevelt and great American presidents who were covered in this bundle that is being made available at a budget price for celebrating the extended President's Day. Meanwhile, another decision or predicament facing the current president is the looming government shutdown. Now, it's interesting to me. There are two words, I think, in the English language that produce groans and discomfort. And one of the two-word phrases is Jeffrey Epstein. The other is government shutdown. Nobody wants to hear about a government shutdown, except it's a reality. The lawmakers and the White House offered no signs of compromise over the holiday weekend in their battle over oversight of federal immigration officers that has led to a pause in funding for the Department of Homeland Security. A partial government shutdown began Saturday. Were you even aware of it? That was after congressional Democrats and President Donald Trump and his team failed to reach a deal on legislation to fund the Department of Homeland Security through September. I mean, part of funding the Department of Homeland Security is for people who have been paying attention. It means you're continuing to fund Kristi Noem, who is just an increasing embarrassment for the cabinet and for the country, frankly. Democrats are demanding changes to how immigration operations are conducted after the fatal shootings of U.S. citizens Alex Pretty and Renee Good by federal officers in Minneapolis last month. Unlike the record 43-day shutdown last fall, the closures are narrowly confined, affecting only agencies under the DHS umbrella, including the Transportation Security Administration, which you encounter every time you get on an airplane, the U.S. Coast Guard, which keeps us safe from drug importers and human traffickers and other bad guys, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. But the work of ICE and CPB will mostly continue unabated thanks to billions in funding from Trump's 2025 tax and spending cut law. That was the big, beautiful bill. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the Israeli cabinet secretary, whose name is Yossi Fuchs, said yesterday that Hamas would have a 60-day period to surrender its weapons. This is including small arms like assault rifles before Israeli forces resumed warfare in the Gaza Strip, following a report from the New York Times claiming that officials associated with the U.S.-led Board of Peace were planning to propose allowing Hamas to keep its small arms for a limited period of time. Hamas rejected the 60-day ultimatum on Monday, with senior official Mahmoud Mordawi saying the group had received no notification from ceasefire mediators about a document deadline. The idea of getting rid of assault rifles doesn't seem so radical or so damaging or so contrary to the peace agreement that the peace board is supposed to be supporting and implementing. And in fact, it seems to me to be fairly basic. Do you believe that it is somehow in the interest of peace to allow a recognized terrorist organization, which has the blood of thousands, literally thousands of people on its hands, to allow that operation to continue to maintain assault rifles? Well, that probably not. And meanwhile, when it comes to foreign policy, there is new speculation about the speeches presented at the Munich Security Conference, which is a get-together of the whole Western Alliance in the city of Munich. And one of the featured speakers who has created a great deal of discussion is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. And his speech to the Munich conference was compared very directly to that of other people who could well be his rivals for running for president of the United States, people including J.D. Vance in particular, who delivered the featured speech last year and was viewed as distinctly anti-European. Marco Rubio, as you will hear, had a different emphasis. So listen.
We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally.
The speech was highlighted because of its contrast with J.D. Vance, who basically said that European civilization was through, and who downplayed the importance of the America-Europe connection. So who else spoke, including Democrats, at the Munich Security Conference to advance a presidential campaign? We will get to that and the upcoming election in 2026, the midterm battle, and what it means.
Medved.
And on the Michael Medved Show, President Trump still has nearly 3 full years to go of his second presidency and his last presidency. He is prohibited by the Constitution from running again for president of the United States in his 80s, which he would be because the president's 79 right now. But in any event, the two names that are most associated as the Republican alternatives to Trump, replacements to Trump, are J.D. Vance, the vice president, who is obviously in that position, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, the leader of the cabinet, who also happens to be this Secretary of State, serving as the head of the National Security Council. And so when people look at the lineup for president, they think right away of J.D. Vance, of course, and of Marco Rubio. And they had a very, very direct and very powerful contrast between the speeches at the Munich Security Conference, which was given by J.D. Vance last year. And it was decidedly anti-European. It talked about how the European nations, France and Germany and Italy and our other allies and the United Kingdom in the European continent, that those allies were in the process of erasing European civilization. But Marco Rubio took the opposite point of view. about the connection between America and our European allies. And he did not talk about its disappearance or of the dissolution of Europe or European civilization. In fact, he talked about America's destiny being eternally intertwined with European civilization. Here's a sample from his generally very well received speech, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, clip 18.
We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own.
Okay, and he got big applause for that line and a standing ovation for the speech in general. He also spoke about the foundations of Western culture in a way that was meant to appeal to his largely European audience. This is clip 14.
Here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here, in Europe, which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne, they testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future.
Rubio went on to speak specifically about the founding of his country, the country that his parents fled to from Cuba years ago, and the British, Scottish, and Irish influence and others that shaped America. This is clip 16.
Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. The entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West, these were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York.
He went on, obviously, and then spoke personally about his own family's history and its connection to European civilization. This is clip 15.
And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. And Jose and Manuela Reina lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation. And yet here I am, reminded by my own story that both our histories and our fates will always be linked.
And then the final remarks that drew very enthusiastic applause about America's future and its future connection, an enduring connection with our long-term European allies and the people who have been linked with us through civilizational history. Secretary Rubio, clip 12.
For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance is the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future.
And the question about boldly racing into the future is, okay, he's separating himself very clearly from the sentiments of J.D. Vance, but is it separating himself from the sentiments and the outlook of Donald Trump, his boss, and the current leader of the Republican Party? We will get to that. We'll also get to a Democrat who made her own controversial appearance at the Munich Security Conference, which is viewed as a very possible expression of her interest in the presidency of the United States. Who are we talking about among the Democrats? Well, there was Gavin Newsom, who was there, but there was also AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who talked also about Western culture and had some mocking comments about Marco Rubio. We'll also be speaking about the Samuel Alito rumor, the idea that he is about to resign from the Supreme Court and to give President Trump the opportunity for changing the court and moving it perhaps even further to the right. Is that a likelihood with Alito's resignation? We will, if that resignation is more than just a rumor, we will get to that and to more about the future of what remains an ally of European civilization and this greatest nation on God's green earth.
Here's a special discount, 50% off just for being a MedHead annual member. Join today at michaelmedved.com.